Hi, welcome back to the channel and video number 104. This video will be a little different than some of the other ones you see. This will be a tribute to my late father's flying career, which stretched from 1949 to 2012, and mostly focusing on his military career in the RCAF. So I wanted to put this together for a long time, mainly for family and friends. But hopefully some of the other people out there watching this will find this interesting. And I'd encourage anyone else out there who's got a father who served in the military and you happen to have a collection of photos showing their career, showing what they accomplished, make a video, make sure they're not forgotten. My father was born in 1928 in St. Stephen, New Brunswick, and later moved to this farm in 1934. So he was growing up during the Great Depression years. And he'd watched a lot of aircraft fly over the house during World War II, which made him very interested in aircraft. Just after the war, at 20 years old, he decided he'd join the RCAF as a radar operator at first, and he quickly remustered as aircrew, which was his real dream, and started pilot training. Primary training commenced on the Harvard in 1948. And he had to do a forced landing here on May 4th, 1951 near Gimli, Manitoba, after the master connecting rod let go in the engine. No injuries here. And he moved into the jet age soon after, flying the Vampire and the T-33. Must have been quite a thrill after flying the Harvard. He was also instructing on B-25 Mitchells, and a couple of his students were up one day and this aircraft here couldn't get the nose wheel lowered, so they put the survival stuff in the tail and put it down rather nicely without doing very much damage. And he managed to wrangle a few hours in the P-51 also, which he really liked. My mother also joined the RCAF in 1952 as a radar technician, and their paths crossed in 1953 in Trenton, Ontario, and they got married in 1954 and spent the next 61 years together as a very happy couple. He was flying all types of airplanes at this time, C-45 Expediter, B-25 Mitchell, and started getting a lot of time on the T-33 seen here. And the next stop was to Chatham, New Brunswick, to the operational training unit there. So here they were being trained as fighter pilots on the F-86 Sabre. The RCAF had 12 squadrons of F-86s in Europe at this time, based in France, Germany, and the UK. These F-86s were built in Montreal by Canadair, and they also had a Canadian Arenda engine in them, which was quite a bit more powerful than the engines normally fitted to the USAF F-86s. The Canadair Sabres were the best fighter aircraft in Europe in the mid-50s, and they remained so until the advent of the F-100 and the Hawker Hunter in the late 50s. My father had a mid-air collision with another F-86 on March 3rd, 1955, head-on, high altitude. The other aircraft sheared the fin off his airplane, and he had to eject. The other pilot was unfortunately killed. His Sabre crashed directly below him, and as he was coming down in the parachute, the fireball came up and almost took him out, but he did survive. And there were many trips down from their base in France to Rabat, Morocco, for gunnery practice in the Mediterranean. These trips were pretty fun for the pilots, although they didn't like Morocco so much, but they really enjoyed the flying and the shooting there. And this is what the airfield at Grotonquin looks like now today. After the tour in Europe in 1958, he was back to Chatham and instructing at the OTU this time. The F-86 was his favorite airplane of all time. And the flying at Chatham was just about as good as it was in Europe. Tremendous amount of fun, tremendous people. My father made hundreds of friends in the Air Force, and they remained friends right throughout his whole life. In 1958, my father was asked to represent Chatham at St. Hubert near Montreal in a low-level navigation contest against other aircraft, especially the two-seat CF-100s. Long story short, he won it, and this is the trophy to prove it. My father was a passenger on this North Star, which is basically a C-54 with Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. They lost one engine and then lost two more, and the pilot decided to put it down beside the runway here. No injuries. In 1966, he was transferred to 415 Squadron in Summerside PEI, flying Neptunes, as seen here, although not the US Navy one seen here. The Neptune had both piston and jet engines on it, so the favorite thing to say was, "I'm coming in with 2 turning and 2 burning." He then converted over to the Argus, which was the most sophisticated maritime patrol aircraft in the world at that time, had the best electronics, very good endurance. Their job was to hunt Russian submarines. They did a lot of practice on Canadian and US submarines. Here's a cool shot from the sub's periscope, bomb doors open. So they trained all around the Atlantic and Arctic regions, Puerto Rico, Florida. Here he is in Gibraltar with number 739, which you'll see later. Hunting friendly subs here, as you can see. This was a big change from the Sabre, but very demanding, very low altitude. A lot of this stuff was below 150 feet, sometimes at night. Had to be extremely careful not to fly into the water. They had a very good safety record with this airplane, though. In 2018, I traveled back to Summerside, where my father was based with the Argus, and where I lived as a little kid. It was pretty cool to see the same airplane he'd flown many times, number 739, the same one that was in the Gibraltar picture. After a desk job for a couple of years in North Bay, Ontario, we transferred to Winnipeg, and he was flying the DC-3 on the VIP flight. That's where he ended his career in 1975. After Winnipeg, we moved to Calgary, and he soon found a job flying pressurized Navajo for an oil company, mostly taking the bigwigs out for fishing trips to Vancouver Island. And I was fortunate enough to get many flights in the right seat with this, and it was a fantastic experience. And his next job was flying a King Air E90 in 1977. And he flew that till 1996, accumulating almost 9,300 hours on this airplane. So a lot of King Air time. And I was, again, very fortunate to get a bunch of right seat time in this airplane. He was reunited with Harvard back in 97 or 98, and I really enjoyed this experience. Brought back some good memories for him. He got to fly this C-45 again after many, many years. This airplane went on to win an award at Oshkosh. 1999, my father helped me build my RV6 that a lot of you people are familiar with. He was the rivet guy, as you can see here. While we were building the RV, we were flying all kinds of different airplanes, just keeping current. In 2003, we had a surprise party for my father's 75th. I'd taken him flying earlier in the day to get him out of the house, and I drove him to this reception hall. He didn't know what was going on. He opened the door. He was really surprised. He had dozens of his old Air Force friends that had traveled from all over Canada to be there. He was just floored. It was fantastic. And you can see the RV6 is almost done in this photo. We were still flying this Grumman a bit just to stay current. And eventually I did the test flights in my airplane. Then my father and I got to fly the RV6 together many, many times all over Alberta. Here we are up at 15,000 feet on oxygen. And lots of cross-country. It's just a great experience to share building the airplane with your father and then flying and learning from him. And we took the RV6 on a long trip down to Reno in 2008. Longest trip I've ever done in the airplane, actually. Reno was always our favorite airplane destination. We went there many, many times together. And we did this formation flight in 2011 with some friends and got some great photos and some pretty good video as well. Lots of fun. My father decided to hang up the headsets finally on his 84th birthday in 2012. We did a final flight in the RV6 here. It was a bit of a sad moment when we shut the airplane down. We both realized that was his last flight, end of an era, and I guess we'll all be here at some point. My father passed away in December 2015. When I was down in Seattle at the Museum of Flight there, I saw this Canadair Sabre, number 363, and I looked in his logbooks, and he'd flown this airplane twice in 1959. Pretty cool. Here's a nice shot of B-25 in formation with 4 Sabres. Here's some nice original art with the Argus over the ocean. Here's a pretty amusing caricature of the Argus on patrol during its Cold War era. My father's flying career fills 6 logbooks and over 17,000 hours, and I thought it would be nice just to show the first entry in 1949, as well as the final flight that he was pilot in command of, 2012. And here's a record of all his assignments, and also most of the types of aircraft he flew. There's a few more that are not in here. These 6 logbooks document a wonderful flying career in the military and afterwards in the civilian world, and I'm glad he left them in my possession so I could share some of his flying life with you here, as well as remember some of the great times I had flying with him later on. We were all once young like this, with everything in the future to look forward to. In the later years, aging slowly begins to take away some of the things that we used to like to do. Flying and aviation was a huge part of my father's life, as it probably is for many people watching this video as well. Make sure you enjoy and appreciate every moment you get to spend in the air, as my father did. My father's was a life well lived. He touched many, many people in aviation and outside aviation. He was just a great man in all respects. I think it's safe to say that all who knew him miss him. Wherever you are, Dad, blue skies and tailwinds always.